The office was silent, except for the sound of keyboards clattering like teeth in the cold. Rows of cubicles stretched endlessly under fluorescent lights, each one a tiny prison decorated with sticky notes, half-dead plants, and motivational posters nobody believed. At the very back, hunched over her desk, sat Hana Yoon, 32 years old and running on instant noodles, bad coffee, and 3 hours of sleep. Her computer screen glowed with red text. Urgent deadline. Tonight. She rubbed her eyes, fingers trembling. Just one more report, she muttered. If I can finish this, maybe I'll get home before midnight. Her inbox dinged. Another email. Another demand. Another fire to put out. Hana laughed softly, the kind of laugh that had no joy in it. Home before midnight? Ha! Try sunrise. The office was empty now. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. That was the cruel irony. Hana was the dependable one. The one who picked up the slack. The one who said yes when everyone else said no. And where had it gotten her? A stiff neck, hollow cheeks, and the creeping dread that she wasn't living a life, just borrowing time. Her heart thudded uncomfortably in her chest. She pressed a hand against it. Too much coffee, she whispered. Way too much coffee. But the thudding didn't stop. It grew heavier. Louder. Like a drum trying to break free from her ribs. The cursor on her screen blinked patiently, as if mocking her. Then, without warning, the world tilted. Her vision blurred. Her hands slipped from the keyboard. She fell forward onto her desk with a soft thud. Her last thought, before darkness claimed her, wasn't about the unfinished report. It wasn't about promotions or paychecks. It was a quiet, bitter regret. I never had a chance to live for myself. When Hana opened her eyes again, the ceiling above her wasn't the white, sterile tiles of the office. It was pale wood, warm with sunlight. Birdsong drifted through an open window. She sat up with a start. Her body felt lighter, younger. Her hands, once tired and calloused from endless typing, were smooth. A small mirror leaned against the wall. Hana staggered toward it, heart racing. The reflection staring back was unmistakable. It was her. But not 32-year-old Hana. 22-year-old Hana. She staggered, clutching the table. What is this? On the nightstand lay an envelope, yellowed with age. Her name was written across it in neat handwriting. With trembling fingers, she tore it open. To my niece Hana. If you are reading this, then this little cafe is yours. I hope it gives you the peace and joy you deserve. The key is on the counter. Her breath caught. A cafe? In her past life, she had barely thought about her late aunt's countryside cafe. She'd been too busy chasing deadlines to ever visit. But now, in this second life, 10 years earlier, the deed to a small cafe sat in her lap. The words spilled from her lips before she could stop them. This time. I'm not wasting it. She clenched the letter against her chest, tears pricking her eyes. No more overtime. No more corporate chains. This time, she'd brew her own coffee, bake her own bread, and live her own life. Outside the window, the sun was rising. And with it, Hana's second chance. The cafe sat at the edge of a quiet street, the kind of place people passed without noticing. Its wooden sign was faded, its windows fogged with dust, and its door groaned in protest every time Hana pushed it open. This, she turned in a slow circle, taking in the crooked shelves and the smell of stale coffee, is going to take some work. The counters were covered in crumbs. The floor was sticky in mysterious patches. The old espresso machine looked like it had fought in 3 wars and lost all of them. Still, her chest fluttered. It was hers. Her second chance. Hana rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She spent hours sweeping, scrubbing, and coughing her way through clouds of dust. She discovered 3 empty sugar bags, 2 rusted baking trays, and 1 extremely judgmental stray cat hiding in the storage room. The cat stared at her with narrowed golden eyes, tail flicking like a whip. Don't look at me like that, Hana said, pointing her mop. I'm new here too. The cat yawned, unimpressed, and promptly curled up on a flour sack. Fine. Squatter's rights, I guess. Her next challenge was baking. The recipe book she found in the kitchen was handwritten, filled with notes from her aunt. Hana followed one for simple butter cookies, but halfway through she realized she had confused salt with sugar. The result? charred little discs that tasted like despair. She gagged on the first bite and tossed the rest in the trash. Okay, she said to herself, flour smudged across her cheek. So maybe I'm not a baker. Yet. Her second attempt exploded the oven. Her third attempt nearly glued her jaw shut. By the fourth, she managed something that resembled a scone, if you squinted. She held it up triumphantly to the cat. Behold! Edible food! The cat blinked once, unimpressed, then licked its paw. Hana sighed. Tough crowd. By evening, she collapsed onto a stool, hair tied messily on top of her head, arms aching. The cafe was still rough around the edges, but it smelled faintly of sugar and lemon now instead of dust and mildew. She looked at the grand opening sign she had painted herself. Crooked letters, bright colors. Tomorrow. Tomorrow she would open the doors. Her stomach twisted with nerves. Would anyone even come? Would she embarrass herself? Hana clenched her fists. No. Not this time. This wasn't a boardroom, and she wasn't anyone's disposable employee. This was her cafe. And even if only one person came tomorrow, she'd greet them with her best smile and a steaming cup of coffee. The bell above the cafe door jingled suddenly. Hana jumped. Sorry, we're not open yet, she called, brushing flour off her apron. But the person who stepped in wasn't a customer. It was Mrs. Kwan, the elderly woman from the fruit stand next door. Her sharp eyes scanned the cafe, her lips pursed. I thought I smelled something burning earlier, she said. That was an experiment, Hana admitted. Mrs. Kwan sniffed. Your aunt used to burn her first batch too. Tradition, I suppose. Hana blinked. You knew my aunt? Of course. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. She had a way of making people feel at home. Her words were stern, but her gaze softened just a little. You'd better live up to that, young lady. Hana nodded quickly, heart swelling. I'll do my best. The old woman gave a curt nod, then left, muttering something about checking in tomorrow. Hana exhaled, half relieved, half terrified. Tomorrow wasn't just her opening day. It was also the day she'd be judged by the people her aunt once cared for. As she locked the cafe that night, she whispered to the stray cat still curled up in the corner. No matter what happens tomorrow, we're going to make this work. Deal. The cat flicked an ear. Which, Hana decided, was as good as a promise. The morning of Hana's grand opening dawned with nerves and too much caffeine. She stood behind the counter, apron tied crookedly, hair pinned back with a stubborn clip. The grand opening sign hung slightly lopsided in the window, but she decided to call it charmingly handmade. Everything smelled faintly of coffee beans and lemon cleaner. Her scones, this time not burnt, sat proudly in the glass case, though the cat had tried to paw at them twice already. Hana took a deep breath. Okay. Hana. You've done harder things than this. You survived corporate life. You can survive brewing coffee for strangers. The bell above the door jingled. Her first customer had arrived. She straightened, plastering on a bright smile. Welcome to. The words died in her throat. The man who stepped through the door wore a crisp gray suit, perfectly tailored. His dark hair was combed neatly, his shoes polished enough to catch the sunlight. He looked exactly the way she remembered him from her past life. Mr. Seo Jun-woo. Her boss. Her executioner. The man who had once looked her in the eye, emotionless, and said, "You're dismissed. Pack up your desk." Her stomach flipped. Of all the people in the city, why him? Why here? Good morning. His voice was low, smooth, and polite as always. He glanced at the menu chalkboard, then at her. Do you serve coffee yet? Hana's mind went blank. She just stared. He can't possibly recognize me, she reminded herself. In this timeline, she was just some random girl running a cafe. Not his overworked subordinate. Not the disposable cog he tossed aside. Yes, she stammered, fumbling for the coffee pot. Yes, we do. Black coffee. He tilted his head slightly. Actually, I'd like a cappuccino. Hana froze. Right. He always ordered cappuccino. Every morning, every day, back in the office. How had she forgotten? Of course, she said quickly, nearly knocking over the sugar jar. As she frothed the milk, she could feel his eyes on her. Calm. Steady. Unreadable. Why was he here? Why this cafe? There had to be hundreds in the city. When she finally slid the cup toward him, her hands trembled just a little. Here you go. 1 cappuccino. He took a sip. His expression didn't change. Her chest tightened. Was it terrible? Did she mess it up? Then, the corner of his mouth lifted. Barely. But it was there. A smile. This is good, he said simply. Hana blinked. Good. That was it? No criticism, no cold dismissal, no clipped remark about efficiency? Thank you, she mumbled. He set his cup down on the counter instead of leaving. And then to her horror he stayed. Pulling a notebook from his briefcase, he began scribbling quietly between sips. Hana busied herself wiping counters that were already clean, peeking at him every few seconds. Why wasn't he leaving? Wasn't he supposed to be on his way to crush souls at the office? Finally, she couldn't help blurting out, "Don't you have work or something?" He looked up, eyebrows slightly raised. "I'm on a break." "A break?" she echoed as if the word was foreign. He studied her for a beat too long, then returned to his notebook. "This place is quiet. It's suitable." Hana's cheeks warmed for no reason she could name. Suitable? That was practically a compliment coming from him. The bell jingled again as Mrs. Kwan entered, carrying a basket of tangerines. Her sharp eyes landed on Mr. Seo immediately. "Oh, who's this handsome fellow?" she demanded. Hana choked. "He's just a customer." Mrs. Kwan's grin was sly. "A customer who looks very comfortable already." "HM." Mr. Seo inclined his head politely. "Seo Jun-woo. Pleased to meet you." Mrs. Kwan gave Hana a knowing look before sweeping out with a muttered, "I'll be back for coffee later, dear." Hana wanted to sink through the floor. By the time Mr. Seo finally stood, finished with his cappuccino and notes, she felt wrung out from sheer nervous energy. He set his cup neatly on the counter. "I'll come again tomorrow," he said casually. Hana blinked. "Tea tomorrow?" He nodded once, as if it were obvious. Then he left, the door jingling shut behind him. Hana sagged against the counter, heart racing. Her first customer. Out of every possible person in the city, why did it have to be him? The next morning, Hana arrived at the cafe before sunrise, just like she had promised herself. She checked the counters, lined up the freshly baked scones, and brewed a pot of coffee that smelled like roasted heaven. "Today, nothing goes wrong," she muttered, tying her apron a little tighter. The bell above the door jingled at exactly 8:03 a.m. Hana's heart lurched. "Good morning," she called, trying to sound cheerful. Standing in the doorway, as predictably as sunrise, was Mr. Seo. Again. He gave a small nod, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the cafe like he owned the place, or maybe just liked being in it. Hana's palms went clammy. "You're early," she said, forcing a smile. "I like mornings," he replied, voice calm. "And apparently this cafe." Hana blinked. Apparently? She tried to focus on the menu board instead of the way his dark eyes seemed to see her, but it was hopeless. Cappuccino?" she offered, though her fingers fumbled with the milk frother. He shook his head slightly. "Something new today." "Surprise me." Hana nearly dropped the cup. Something new? Was he trying to test her? Or just being nice? She gritted her teeth and poured her heart into the effort. Latte art was messy. More of a frothy abstract than a leaf, but it smelled divine. "Here," she said, placing the cup in front of him. "I call it the morning sunshine." Mr. Seo raised an eyebrow, then took a slow sip. He didn't say anything at first. Hana's stomach did flips. "Is it terrible? Did I burn it?" Finally, he looked up and smiled. A real smile this time. Gentle and almost shy. "This is a very good," he said. Hana's cheeks warmed. Really? Really?" As the days passed, Mr. Seo became a fixture. The kind of regular that everyone notices, without ever saying a word. He sat at the corner table, ordered his morning sunshine, or whatever Hana decided to invent that day, and wrote in his little notebook. Sometimes he read. Sometimes he stared out the window. Always he smiled. The neighborhood began noticing too. Mrs. Kwan wagged her finger as she dropped off another basket of fruit. "You see that young man? she asked, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. He comes every morning. I've never seen him leave. Hana hurried to defend herself. Mrs. Kwan, he's just a customer. Sure, Mrs. Kwan said knowingly. A very handsome, very interested customer. Hana groaned. He's not interested. He's just annoying in a very polite way. One morning, Hana forgot his order entirely. She had been distracted, humming to herself while trying to fix a collapsed pastry. When she finally looked up, he was watching her, an amused glint in his eyes. Cappuccino? She stammered. He tilted his head, smiling like it was the funniest thing in the world. You forgot again. Hana's ears burned. Well, you didn't remind me and... He chuckled softly, shaking his head. It's okay. I'll have whatever you make today. Her heart skipped a beat. He wasn't angry. Not at all. He trusted her? That small, quiet acknowledgement felt more powerful than any promotion she had chased in her past life. Even as Hana worked, she found herself glancing at him. The way his fingers tapped the notebook, the little frown he made when concentrating, the way sunlight caught in his hair. Why am I thinking about him like this? But then he'd glance up and smile, and her cheeks would betray her. By the end of the week, Hana realized something terrifying and exhilarating. He wasn't just a customer. He was becoming part of her life. And she had no idea whether she was ready for that. Hana had finally discovered a rhythm. The mornings no longer felt like a desperate scramble against time and burnt pastries. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee, sweet dough, and something Hana liked to think of as possibility. She had a new mission. Experiment with pastries. Something fresh, something uniquely hers. The first attempt was a disaster. The second, also a disaster. By the third, she was ready to give up entirely. But then, almost by accident, she combined a honey glaze with butter scones, sprinkling a touch of cinnamon on top. She tasted one tentatively. Her eyes widened. This is amazing. It was soft, sweet, buttery, with just enough warmth from the cinnamon to make the soul feel cozy. Finally, she whispered to the cat, who purred from his usual perch. Something edible. The next morning, she put a small sign on the counter. Honey butter scones. First batch of happiness. The bell jingled, and in walked Mr. Seo, as punctual as the sunrise. He glanced at the scones, then at her. What's new today? He asked. Honey butter scones, she said, trying to sound casual but failing. I made them this morning. Want to try? He raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. I'll try one. Hana handed him a scone, feeling like she was passing him a tiny piece of her soul. He bit into it slowly, savoring each chew. Hana watched him like a hawk. Then, his eyes softened. A real smile appeared. This is incredible, he said. Hana blinked. Really? Really, he repeated, almost as if saying it once wasn't enough. Her chest swelled. She had spent her past life trying to earn approval from corporate bosses, clients, and indifferent co-workers. None of it had ever felt like this. Simple, honest appreciation. Over the next few days, Hana experimented with more flavors, each time nervously presenting them to Mr. Seo. He was never critical. He would nod thoughtfully, smile faintly, and sometimes offer small suggestions. A pinch more cinnamon, a touch less sugar, a dollop of cream. The gestures were subtle, but Hana noticed them all. He's noticing me, she realized with a mixture of panic and excitement. One rainy afternoon, Hana was struggling with a tray of pastries when Mr. Seo appeared at the door, coat dripping, umbrella folded neatly under his arm. You're soaked, she said instinctively, grabbing a towel. He shook his head, droplets flying. I don't mind. But it smells amazing in here. Hana smiled, brushing his coat off as best she could. It's getting easier. He leaned against the counter, eyes on her hands dusted with flour. You seem happy, he said quietly. She looked up, startled. I am happy. It's different from work. It's mine. He nodded, thoughtfully. I think I understand. And for the first time, Hana saw a vulnerability in him. Just a fleeting glimpse of the man behind the polished suit, the composed exterior. It made her heart do something foolish, something impossible to ignore. By the end of the week, word had spread. Locals began stopping by just to try Hana's honey butter scones. And Mr. CO? He never missed a morning. Hana couldn't help but wonder. Was he just a loyal customer, or was there something more? Every time he smiled, every time he lingered longer than necessary, Hana felt herself leaning closer to a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to admit. Maybe he's here for me, not just the scones. And if that was true, what did it mean for her second chance? The rain came suddenly, as if the sky had decided to pour out every ounce of its mood at once. Hana was wiping down tables when the first drops hit the window. Then the wind picked up, rattling the door, and the streets outside quickly turned into glistening rivers. And just as the storm reached its peak, the bell above the cafe jingled. She froze. Standing in the doorway was Mr. CO, coat plastered to his body, hair damp, and an umbrella dripping onto the floor. CO. You, she started, but the words caught in her throat. I didn't have a choice, he said with a faint shrug, brushing water off his shoulders. The streets are a mess. I couldn't leave. Hana grabbed a towel and handed it to him. Here, dry off. Sit anywhere. You're safe here. He chose the corner table, the one by the window, and pulled out his notebook. But today, he didn't write. He just watched the rain. Hana returned to her counter, glancing at him nervously. You could have just left, she said after a moment. He finally looked at her. His expression wasn't the composed mask she had grown used to. There was something softer there, almost human. I didn't want to, he admitted quietly. Hana blinked. You didn't want to? Yes, he said simply. I like this place. I like being here. Even if it's just for coffee. Her heart skipped. The casual way he said it made her feel like a secret had been shared. A secret she wasn't sure she was ready to own. They sat in silence for a while, the storm outside creating a world all its own. Hana brewed a fresh pot of coffee and placed a cup in front of him. He took it without a word, cradling it like it was more than just a drink. Finally, curiosity got the better of her. You're not still working at the office, are you? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He shook his head. I left. Recently. Needed a break. Time to figure out what I actually want to do. Hana's chest tightened. In her past life, he had always seemed untouchable. Cold, unyielding, all work and no warmth. But here, with rain dripping off his collar and steam curling from his coffee cup, he looked human. Vulnerable, even. Why come here every day then? She asked softly. He paused, his eyes meeting hers for the first time without pretense. Because it's the only place I can breathe, he said. The words lingered in the air between them. Hana felt something she hadn't allowed herself in years. A flicker of understanding, of connection, of possibility. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the cafe, there was a fragile warmth. Two people, quietly sharing space, letting the world fall away. And for the first time since her rebirth, Hana realized that her second chance wasn't just about running a cafe. It was about moments like this. Moments that might lead to something real. By the time the rain slowed, the cafe smelled of wet wood, coffee, and something Hana couldn't name but wanted to explore. Mr. CO finally stood, brushing off his coat. I should go, he said. But this time his eyes lingered. See you tomorrow? Hana nodded, a shy smile tugging at her lips. Yes. See you tomorrow. And as the bell jingled behind him, Hana realized she was no longer just baking pastries. She was baking hope. The following weeks settled into a comforting rhythm. Hana arrived early to prep the cafe, the smell of fresh bread greeting her like an old friend. Customers trickled in steadily, some locals, some curious passers-by, but always punctual, always patient. And always, without fail, Mr. CO. He became more than a mysterious regular. He helped when she struggled with heavy deliveries, carried bags of flour up the narrow stairs, and even offered practical tips about keeping the coffee warm longer. Hana's heart did something confusing every time he offered to help. It wasn't just gratitude. It was warmth, anticipation, and a little spark she refused to name aloud. The cafe began attracting more people, drawn not only by the pastries but by its cozy charm. Jean, the local delivery boy, started showing up for coffee breaks and helping Hana carry trays. Mrs. Kwan became a fixture, always with a sharp comment or a knowing look, her eyes twinkling when she teased Hana about her persistent admirer. A few locals even suggested small open mic nights to bring in more visitors. Hana hesitated at first but agreed, figuring the cafe could use a little buzz. It was becoming alive. Warm. Homey. One rainy afternoon, Hana was kneading dough when Mr. Seo appeared at the door, not in his usual suit this time, but casual clothes, hair tousled from the wind. "You're soaked again," Hana said, grabbing a towel. "I couldn't resist helping," he replied, holding a basket of fresh bread rolls he had apparently picked up from the bakery down the street. Hana blinked. Flustered. "Helping?" "Yes," he said simply. "You do enough already. Let me do a little." Her cheeks flushed, and she tried to hide behind the counter. I don't need your help." "You do," he countered gently, setting the basket down. "Besides, it's fun." "For me." Hana froze. "Fun. For him." Later, during a quiet lull, she watched him sit at his corner table, tearing into a warm scone, eyes half closed in delight. "You know," she ventured cautiously, "you make this cafe feel alive." He looked up, startled, then smiled softly. "And you," he said, "make it feel safe, comfortable, something worth coming back to." Hana's heart raced. She turned quickly, pretending to busy herself with the trays, but she could feel his gaze on her. Safe, comfortable, worth coming back to. Words she had never imagined herself hearing from him. Not in her past life, not ever. That evening, after the cafe had quieted and the last customers had left, Hana sat at the counter, cleaning up. The stray cat curled beside her, a comforting weight. She realized that this little cafe, the smell of coffee and baked goods, the community, and yes, even him, was becoming the center of her world. Mr. Seo lingered near the door. "Tomorrow," he said casually, "I can help set up the tables for the open mic night." Hana blinked. "You want to help?" He shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I like seeing this place full of life. And I like seeing you here happy." Hana's cheeks burned. "You're impossible," she muttered, though her lips curved into a shy smile. He chuckled, a soft warm sound that made the room feel brighter than the overhead lights ever could. As he left, Hana realized something. She wasn't just running a cafe anymore. She was creating a life. A life full of second chances. And if she was honest with herself, she was beginning to hope that he might be a part of it too. The town square buzzed with activity. Colorful stalls lined the streets, each one boasting homemade treats, crafts, and tiny treasures. The annual cafe and food festival was the biggest event of the year. And Hana had decided, bravely, to enter her little cafe. She wheeled a cart laden with pastries, baskets of scones, and jars of her special honey butter spread. The grand opening, lopsided sign had been replaced with a small, cheerful banner reading, "Second Life. Second Chance Café." She took a deep breath, heart racing. This is it. Time to show the world what we've got. The first few customers trickled in, curious locals sampling her scones and nodding in delight. Hana allowed herself a small smile. And then disaster struck. Hana." Jin's voice came from behind the cart. He looked pale. "The oven. It's broken. Totally broken." Hana froze. She glanced at her carefully packed trays of pastries. Some had cooled too much, some were squashed from the bumps in the cart. "Oh no," she whispered, panic creeping in. From the corner of the festival, she saw Mr. Seo walking toward her, hands in pockets but eyes sharp and attentive. "Problem?" he asked. Hana shook her head frantically. "The oven. My pastries. Everything." He took a deep breath and assessed the situation. "We'll fix this. Don't panic." With Mr. Seo's calm guidance, they sprang into action. He helped her stack trays efficiently, keeping pastries neat and accessible. He rearranged the cart for maximum visibility. He even helped Jean hand out free samples while Hana brewed fresh coffee on a portable setup. By the time the first wave of festival-goers arrived, everything was in order. The chaos had been transformed into organized charm, the cafe stall glowing amidst the bustle. Throughout the day, Hana noticed something new. Mr. Seo wasn't just helpful. He was attentive. He watched her carefully, anticipating her next move, handing her tools before she even asked. At one point, a little girl dropped a scone, and Hana bent down to help her. Mr. Co gently touched her shoulder, whispering, "Take a moment. I've got it." And just like that, her heart skipped. By the afternoon, the stall was swarming with customers. Everyone loved the honey butter scones, and Hana was too busy to notice her own exhaustion. Finally, when the festival began winding down, Hana slumped against the cart. "Thank you," she said, breathless, looking at Mr. Co. He smiled, brushing crumbs from his sleeve. "We make a good team." Hana's face heated. "We do." "Yes," he said, his tone softening. "I think this place, this life, is worth it. And you make it worth it." Hana's chest fluttered. The words weren't a corporate memo. They weren't a polite compliment. They were genuine. For the first time, she realized that her second chance wasn't just about the cafe. It was about connection. About trust. About someone who could see her, not as an employee, not as a subordinate, not as a stranger, but as Hana. And standing there, flour-dusted and exhausted, she realized she might feel the same way about him. As the festival ended and the crowds thinned, Hana watched the sun set over the town square. Her cafe stall was packed away, her pastries mostly gone, but her heart felt full. She caught Mr. Co's gaze across the emptying street. He smiled, a slow, private smile, and she knew without words that tomorrow he would return. And she would be ready. The cafe was unusually quiet that morning. The sun poured through the windows, warming the polished wooden counters and highlighting the soft steam rising from freshly brewed coffee. Hana moved carefully behind the counter, her hands steady but her heart racing. Today felt different. She glanced toward the corner table. Mr. Co was already there, notebook closed, eyes on the window, watching the street. He looked peaceful, less composed than usual, more real somehow. Hana's chest fluttered. "Morning," she said softly, placing a cup of coffee in front of him. He looked up, surprised, then smiled. "Morning." Silence settled between them, comfortable yet charged. Hana perched on the stool across from him, trying to steady her thoughts. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Co, can I ask you something?" "Of course," he said, tilting his head slightly. Why do you come here every day? Even when it rains or it's early, or," she hesitated, cheeks burning, "even when it's inconvenient." He took a slow sip of coffee before answering. "Because this is the only place I feel like I can be myself. Safe. Comfortable. And because it's the only place I want to be in the mornings." Hana's stomach did a slow, dizzying flip. You like it here because of me?" she whispered, barely audible. He looked at her, eyes soft, steady. "Partly. But not just that. You make it worth coming back to. Every day." Her heart hammered in her chest. She had lived an entire life of being overlooked, undervalued, invisible. And here was this man, someone she had feared, someone she had once despised, telling her that she mattered. Hana's voice trembled. I'm glad you come here. I like seeing you here." He smiled, small and genuine. "I'm glad I'm here. With you." The words hung between them, fragile and tender, yet heavier than any corporate deadline she had ever faced. Hana reached across the counter, almost instinctively, and brushed a strand of flour-dusted hair from his forehead. He leaned slightly into the touch, eyes closing for a heartbeat. "You're impossible," she murmured, a teasing lilt in her voice. "And yet," he replied, "I can't stay away." They laughed softly, the tension breaking, leaving only warmth and a quiet sense of understanding. For the first time, Hana realized that her second chance wasn't just about the cafe, the pastries, or even her new life. It was about this connection, trust, laughter, and the kind of intimacy that comes from being seen and seeing someone else in return. And as the sun poured golden light over the small cafe, Hana knew without a doubt that this time she wasn't going to waste it. This time she had found her place. And maybe, just maybe, her person too. The morning sun spilled across the small cafe, painting the counters in golden light. Hana stood behind the counter, apron tied neatly, and took a deep breath. The cafe smelled like roasted coffee, warm pastries, and something else. Possibility. It had been months since she had woken up in this second life. Months since she had stepped into her aunt's little cafe and vowed to make it her own. And what a journey it had been. She had learned to bake, messily at first, then with pride. She had built a little community. Jean delivering with a smile, Mrs. Kwan offering sharp but caring advice, locals stopping by just to chat and share their days. And she had found someone who made her heart skip. A man who had once been her fear, now the reason she smiled. The bell above the door jingled. Hana looked up and saw him. Mr. Seo, impeccably dressed as always, but with that soft smile that had become hers alone. He stepped inside and set a small bouquet of wildflowers on the counter. "For the owner who gave me a second chance," he said. Hana blinked, a laugh escaping her before she could stop it. "You really didn't have to." "I wanted to," he replied, eyes glinting with warmth. She felt her chest tighten in the best possible way. "Thank you for everything. For coming here every morning. For being here." He leaned casually against the counter, eyes soft and honest. "You made it easy to come back. You make it impossible not to." Her cheeks burned, but this time, she didn't hide it. "Impossible not to what?" she teased. He smiled, reaching across to take her hand. "Impossible not to care." Hana felt her heart soar. She had spent years chasing deadlines, approvals, promotions, chasing everything but herself. And here she was, finally living a life that felt real, warm, full. A life where laughter bounced off the walls, the aroma of coffee and baked goods lingered in the air, and love, gentle, patient, and unexpected, could grow. She squeezed his hand, a shy smile curling her lips. "I think I like this second chance," she whispered. He grinned, leaning just close enough to brush his forehead against hers. "So do I," he murmured. Outside, the morning sun rose higher, bathing the cafe in light. And inside, Second Life, Second Chance Café was exactly what Hana had always needed. A place of warmth, a home, and the beginning of something beautiful. One coffee, one scone, one smile at a time. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.